Welcome to the Human Performance lecture series. This is going to sound a little strange. This is the one that is sort of the least from an optimal health point of view, but it's the one that all of you are doing on a regular basis that is really harming your chances to achieve that optimal health. So very much an important workshop for you to come out to. And we've actually changed the title of the workshop a little bit. Sitting is the new smoking, the steps you need to take now to prevent a lifetime of health problems. Anyone familiar with this position at all? Anyone familiar with this position at all? Right? Person sitting on the phone all day long like this and so forth. None of you guys do that, right? We're going to talk about a number of different things today. We're going to talk about your role in today's workshop. So for those of you who thought you were just here to be entertained by me, for the next 45 minutes or so, you actually have a very important role in today's workshop. We're going to talk about the deadly and deathly effects of sitting. And I know that sounds a little over the top, but we're going to get to that as well. We'll talk about the 4 steps to correcting ergonomic damage. Most experts in this field only talk about 2 different steps. This is one of my specialties. We're going to talk on 4 different topics. We'll talk about how injuries occur. We'll talk about something called normal posture, normal nerves, normal muscles, normal joints. We will talk about this term called subluxation, which most of you should know since you're either patients or wellness clients of mine, but that essentially is abnormal position and thus abnormal health. We will go from head to toe and show you how sitting affects you. We'll go from head to toe and show you the changes that you can make because of that. If we have time, we'll teach you how to organize your work area, and if we have time, even some relaxation techniques that you can do as well. So let's start with something really, really simple here today. Let's get everyone to please sit up perfectly straight for me.
How done?
My question to you, most of you are patients of mine. You're in a chiropractic health center, a wellness center. You are at an ergonomic workshop. You've been spending not more than 5 minutes sitting for most of you, and every single one of you had to move to sit up straight. Okay? So my question to you is, why does that happen? Why do we immediately go back into that slouched posture? That's one of the things we'll touch on today as well. Just how bad is sitting? Well, you saw the new title of the workshop, Sitting is the New Smoking. And if you want, you can get this article. I wrote this article last year where we discuss all this stuff in detail. Of course, we'll cover it today as well. If you want this article, just simply leave us your email address, or you can go to www.drjohnzielonka.com. It's one of the free health articles you can download there as well. But what you need to know is that's not hyperbole when we talk about sitting being the new smoking. They've now done the scientific studies that show that sitting for an hour will take more time off your life than smoking a cigarette. Okay? Everyone familiar with that? Okay? So when we say sitting is the new smoking, we're not being over the top. Right? The amount of time we spend sitting is taking time off your life. Okay? And we're going to discuss exactly why that is so. Number one, again, if most of you are patients or wellness clients, you've seen this poster before, something we refer to as forward head posture. So number one, when you're sitting in front of that desk or computer, you're tending to do this. Okay? And when I do this, okay, my muscles in the neck and the shoulders are contracting the whole time. When I do this, I'm putting more tension on the nerves, I'm putting more pressure on the spine. Okay? This comes from everyday stuff, not just your chronic work posture sitting in front of the desk or computer, but it's the people looking down into their iPhones or playing on their iPads, or the people carrying the heavy backpacks, things such as this. The Mayo Clinic knew more than a decade ago that the chronic prolonged posture like this leads to disc herniations, arthritis, pinched nerves, and so forth. The funny thing is we really don't get concerned about it until I tell you you're going to turn into that little old lady with a hump in the back, and then that's when people don't want to end up looking like that. Understand this is a much more important issue than people realize. Right? Understand it's not also just affecting what's happening with the head and the neck, but if I'm carrying my head forward, well, then the rest of my body has to tense up to compensate for that as well. So when I have this forward head posture, I can in fact be affecting pressure on the low back, on the hips, on various other parts of the body as well, which of course can affect the nerves that go to everywhere in the body as well. Okay? It gets actually even a little bit worse than that, because understand that the weight of your head is about the weight of a bowling ball. So appreciate there's a difference between holding a bowling ball here and holding a bowling ball out here. And if I'm doing that all day long, on top of all the things we've talked about, you even create pathological changes in the blood flow to the brain. Anyone in favor of having pathological changes to the blood flow to the brain? Okay? And appreciate how that can affect so many different things as well. And then last but not least, if I haven't scared you enough yet, okay, when we do this over the course of a lifetime, okay, understand that your spinal cord runs right through the spinal column. So if I'm doing this all through an entire lifetime like this, okay, they've actually done studies on cadavers that show that you're stretching your spinal cord over the course of your lifetime by as much as 5 to 7 centimeters. Okay? Not millimeters, but centimeters. Anyone want me to pull out their spinal cord and stretch it 5 to 7 centimeters? And understand that's how your brain communicates with everything else in the body. Okay? You're creating some serious adverse effects to your health. Anyone know how much time the average person spends sitting? You actually spend 37 years of your lifetime sitting. Now, appreciate this, that is 37 hours non-stop, 24 hours a day. Okay, that's the equivalent, okay, Pavel, that's the equivalent of sitting 8 hours a day for 111 years. Okay? Because we're not just talking the amount of time you spend sitting in front of your desk or computer, although that's the majority of where you're getting this from. We're talking you were sitting either driving to work or sitting on the bus getting there. We're talking when you're sitting for breakfast and lunch and dinner. We're talking when you're sitting watching TV. We're spending an incredible amount of time sitting, putting our bodies into a position that are tremendous adverse effects to our health. It's amazing that this is not considered more of a national health issue. You know, the cumulative effects of what this is doing, affecting everything from pathological blood, blood flow changes to stretching the spinal cord, to the effects of all these things taking time off your life. This should be a national health issue. Now, we're going to talk about the 4 steps, as I said at the start. So step number 1 is awareness. Very simply, if we're not aware that we're not in a good posture, well then how on earth do we ever change that? Number 2, we need to know what really are proper ergonomics. What is the proper way to sit? Okay? Number 3 and number 4, most ergonomic specialists do not touch on this, but again, because of our background, we're going to talk about this. Very important just as much as we're going to understand if you've done this over the course of your lifetime or for a number of years, you've actually, basically have a number of weaknesses throughout the body. So we need to teach you how to correct those weaknesses. And then number 4, we also need to teach you how to correct the underlying damage. So how do injuries occur? Well, I think most people are familiar, with a very simple approach this way, where you have someone like the weightlifter or the fall or the accident or the injury, where simply it's a great deal of force, okay, over a split second of time. Okay? When we're talking about sitting, we're talking about, okay, that small amount of force. It's over such a prolonged period of time. If I asked you to walk with your arm like this for 5 or 10 seconds, that would not be a problem. If I asked you to all lift your arm like this now and leave it to the end of the workshop, okay, some of you would have a problem with that, let alone if you did that for the rest of the day. That's what we're talking about, the small amount of force, but over the prolonged period of time. Now, what we're looking to achieve is, I'm going to make this really, really simple for you, okay, is we're not looking to make this complicated. I don't want you to have to remember, that your chin has to be at the apex 14.2 inches from the center of the monitor and so forth. What we want to achieve is something called neutral position. So what neutral position is if I'm looking straight on, I should have a spine that looks straight. Make sense so far? Right? Because if my spine is straight, then I have equal pressure on both sides of the body. I have equal pressure on both sides of the disc. I have equal room for the nerves to exit on both sides as well. If I'm looking from a side posture, then I want to see curves in my body. If I look in the neck, I actually should curve this way. In the mid-back, I should curve back this way. In the lower back, this way. And then back to the tailbone, I curve back this way again. Right? Not to get into an embryology workshop, but this curve here in the thoracic spine, the mid part of the back, and this curve here down at the sacrum and the tailbone, you're essentially born with those curves. This curve in the neck develops when you're about 6 months of age, give or take a couple months, when you're a little baby and you first start to crawl and you start to pull your head up to see what's going on in the world. And this curve in the lower back develops, again, about 12 months of age, again, give or take a couple months, when you get up on 2 feet and you learn how to walk for the first time. The reason we want those curves is those curves actually give strength to the spine as well. I don't know if you know a lot about engineering, but that's why bridges have arches to them. Okay, those curves give strength and support to the spine, and again, they allow for equal amount of pressure, equal balance on both sides as well. That's what we're looking to achieve. Unfortunately, we spend a lifetime subjecting our bodies to stress. Whether you believe in God or Mother Nature, whoever created the body did an incredible job. We just go out of our way on a daily basis to mess that up. The scientific term for that is something called subluxation. And again, people make this way more complicated than it needs to be. A subluxation simply means you have a misalignment in the spine that comes from daily stress, and that stress can certainly be the chronic work postures, but it can be emotional stress, psychological stress, nutritional stress, and so forth. And what that subluxation does, the biggest thing it does, that misalignment, is it puts pinching or pressure on the nerve. Number 1, your body does not like when its nerves are pinched, right? And number 2, it's disrupting that brain-body connection as well. Understand that that's how the brain controls everything in the body, so when you do this, you can affect absolutely anything in the entire body. We're not just talking the low back pains and the headaches. Every organ, every cell, every tissue in the entire body can be affected this way. And then we have the muscles that overlap, right? And then that's typically the first symptom that people will feel, and they'll think, oh, I have a muscle problem, right? You know, I've been sitting, oh, my shoulders are kind of tight, oh, I just need a good massage or a good stretch. And stretch and massage are both great things, okay? But all the stretching and massage in the world will not correct a subluxation. They're not getting to the underlying cause of the problem. Headaches are the #1 complaint from people who sit all day for a living. Right? Now, not surprisingly, they are also the #1 complaint that people are most dissatisfied with, right, from the advice they get from their medical doctors on how to deal with these headaches, because headaches are not due to a lack of Tylenol. Now, again, if we understand what's going on, right, this is very, very simple. Right? If I'm in these chronic work postures, right, and if I have that forward head posture, if I'm subluxated, I'm going to be affecting those nerves, right, that exit through the neck and actually go up and create the headaches. Because when those nerves are affected, then they will understand not only create those headaches, but they also control the size of the arteries. And if we get too much blood flow or too little blood flow to the brain, that's also going to be a factor, you know, in headaches as well. Anyone get any eye strain? End of the day. We have one vote here, a vote at the back. Right? And understand, people sort of marvel at their eyes and their eyesight, where they think, okay, I've got 2 marbles in the middle of my head and so forth. Understand those eyes are controlled by 6 small little muscles. Right? There are muscles that move the eyes up, muscles that move the eyes down, muscles that move the eyes from side to side, muscles that move the eyes down and inward as well. So those tiny little muscles, again, if I'm in that chronic posture, if I were to hold my arm like this for 6 or 8 hours, no different than those eyes, the muscles controlling the eyes, holding them in that same position as well. I'm simply overstraining those muscles on a prolonged period. The studies have shown that people who do this actually lose their accommodation about 5 years earlier. Accommodation is your body's ability to focus on an object as it moves in closer to you as well. You're doing a number of things from an adverse perspective to your health. Anyone get any neck pain? And the other ones, their neck is too sore to lift their hands up, right? And that's still about half the audience here today. And again, if we think what's happening biomechanically and from a spinal point of view, this makes perfect sense. Right? When I start to take that spine and put it into postures that are not normal for it, whether my head is back like this, well, then I'm going to be putting more pinching and pressure on the nerves that exit at the back, and creating muscle imbalances in there. If I'm the guy in the top right-hand corner of the slide and I'm forward like this, then again, I'm just doing the exact same thing, but to the opposite side of the spine. If I'm this guy in this corner here where I have the head turned off to one side, again, it's just changing what position am I doing that I'm putting abnormal pressure on the nerves and affecting the musculature and so forth. Or are you this guy in the bottom right-hand corner where you've got that phone, you know, cradle there all day long as well. That's the forward head posture that we were talking about. What's really neat in here, right, some of you have seen this, is we have something called the Bioprint Bioprint in here. And what's neat about this is we can actually quantify your forward head posture. Right? This is a really neat program used by a lot of Olympic athletes and professional athletes, where we can actually stick reflective markers on your body, take digital images, and we show you where your posture is off to the exact millimeter. We give you about a 20-page report showing you how to, the specific exercise to help rebalance that as well. But my favorite measurement out of all this is one of these ones on the bottom here. I don't know if you can see this, where we can actually take the effective weight of your head versus the true weight of your head. So in this particular person here, the weight of this guy's head was 14.1 pounds, but because of his forward head posture, okay, the difference of holding a bowling ball here versus holding a bowling ball out here, the effective weight of this guy's head was 27 pounds. Okay? That would be like me taking a 13-pound weight and wrapping it around the back of your neck, and you carry that 24 hours a day. Now, the worst that we've seen here in the office is a guy whose effective weight was 25 pounds greater. Right? So imagine someone sticking a 25-pound, you know, barbell to your head, and you walk around like this, and then you wonder why you end up with neck pain and headaches and subluxation and affect the nerves and so forth. And this is what you're doing on a daily basis, unknowingly to yourself. Anyone get any shoulder arm pain? End of the day. Let's go back to my example. If you carried your arm around like this for 8 or 10 hours a day, you'd understand why your arm would get shoulder sore like that. Anyone have any so-called carpal tunnel syndrome out there? Okay? So I don't want to get too much into this because this is a completely different workshop that we do. Carpal tunnel syndrome definitely exists. It's also one of the most grossly overdiagnosed conditions that's out there. Okay? Very quickly, you have 8 little bones that come through the wrist. Okay? They're called your carpal bones. That's where we get carpal from. Overlap, they form sort of a tunnel shape. Overlapping that is something called a flexor retinaculum, which I just say is a big fancy word for elastic band. And then passing through that are the nerves and the arteries that then come down into the fingers. Okay? True carpal tunnel syndrome would be that as that nerve passes through that carpal tunnel, it's being irritated. Okay? Unfortunately, what people are missing is that same nerve that passes through there starts all the way up here, right? It exits the neck. And that nerve can actually be compressed at 32 different locations before it passes through there. The problem with that, and the reason this is important to know, is anyone who ever gets numbness or tingling in the fingers immediately thinks they have carpal tunnel problems, and they go for surgery. I've taken people fresh in these workshops where you can see the scars from the surgery, and I can still hit spots above there where they'll jump out of the chair. And the reason, that's why carpal tunnel surgery is about a 50% success rate, is because often they're not getting to the underlying cause of the problem. So like I said, I don't want to get off on too much of a tangent, but if you ever have, think you have carpal tunnel syndrome, please come here first before you do anything. Okay? Anyone tired end of the day? Okay? So why are we tired end of the day? Is it because we all love our jobs? No. How many people love their jobs? I do, and we got a couple of other half hands there. How many people think it's the great air quality in their building? Okay? You know, understand there are a number of reasons why we get fatigued, but one of the nice things about the workshops, and especially if your patient's here, you know, and how I explain your health status to you, is it's what I call a sanity saver, because things will finally start to make sense. There will be a reason why you're feeling the way that you're feeling in there. So appreciate that if you're someone who all day long is sitting in front of that desk or computer with that forward head posture, you're also compressing your rib cage when you do this. If I would ask you to point to your ribs, they are down here, but they come all the way up, they wrap all the way around in the back. They basically form a suit of armor for the heart and the lungs, but if I get into this posture, I've now just compressed my rib cage. Okay? And appreciate that every time I take a breath in, my ribs need to expand and contract. Well, guess what? If I'm compressing them, I'm going to be getting less oxygen into my body. On average, the studies show that you get about 30 to 40% less oxygen into your body. So on top of everything else, a job you may not like, the chronic work postures, the poor air quality, then you're saying, okay, I'm going to get myself into a posture where I'm putting 30 to 40% less oxygen in my body, and then I wonder why I'm tired end of the day. Anyone get any back pain? Okay? And again, the one thing that the human body really was never meant to do was to go into a seated posture. When I am seated, I'm putting about 10 times the amount of pressure on my lower back than I would in a standing posture. Okay? Standing is far better, you know, than the seated posture, and that's 10 times greater than if I'm in a lying down position as well. Just think of what we're doing to that spine. Think of the compression we're doing. Think of the pressure we're putting on the nerves. Think of how we're affecting, you know, the musculature and so forth as well. Anyone getting leg or foot pain end of the day? Yes, no, a couple of head shaking and so forth. Anyone willing to admit they do this where they kick off their shoes when they get to work and then they put their shoes back on at the end of the day and it seems like someone's actually giving you a size smaller set of shoes? Have you ever noticed this? Okay? And appreciate, again, this is a sanity saver. This is actually happening because one of the things that aids in blood flow is movement. If I'm not moving, okay, then I'm not getting that blood flow. I will actually get the blood tending to pool in the feet. Okay? My feet will actually swell, and that's why your shoes will feel like a tighter fit when you put them on. Okay? Everything actually makes perfect sense if you know what's going on. Anyone's in basket look like this compared to their out basket. Okay? So on top of everything else, just the stress of work, whether you're overworked, whether you hate your boss. How many people love their boss? Well, that's pretty good, not bad. Right? You know, understand, and then what does stress do? Stress has been linked to absolutely every disease known to mankind, heart disease and cancer and diabetes and so forth. So appreciate what sitting is doing to you on a regular basis. So what do we do to prevent all this? Quit our jobs? Right? So, and I've been doing this workshop for over 20 years now, and I've done this workshop to thousands and thousands of people. And in 20 years of doing this, I've had 2 people out of thousands and thousands, when they knew just how much sitting was affecting them, they actually went and quit their job. Okay? Now, I don't know if they were independently wealthy or they won the lottery. We actually did have a patient who shared in a $52 million lottery win and so forth. But appreciate, I'm assuming none of you are retiring tomorrow. Is that true? Okay, so what we need to do is what are the steps that we can actually do to help prevent this? Okay? So this is really step number 2, from an ergonomic position, from a perspective, what we want to do, again, I want to make this easy for you, is what we really are trying to do is we want to take that neutral position and we want to turn it into a seated posture, maintaining that neutral position as much as possible. Couple key things, understand ergonomics has to be specific to you. There is no one size fits all. When I first practiced in Toronto years ago, I used to be corporate doctor for one of the largest Canadian tire stores in Canada. We saved these guys hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, but one of the key things was that it was specific to them. There's no one size fits all. You should think of your ergonomics like the clothes that you wear. So Heike, I'm not wearing your clothes, you shouldn't be wearing my clothes. your ergonomics has to be the same thing. There's no one chair for the average person. So what we want to do is specific to you, and then we want to take that neutral posture and turn it into a seated posture. We always want to start with the chair. Okay? We're not starting with the computer monitor or the desk height or things like that. We want to start with the chair. When we do that, there are typically 4 hot spots. Hot spot number 1 is the small of your back, that curve in the lumbar spine in there. And what we want is we want that back support to actually come in and fit very nicely into where that curve in the spine is. Okay? One of the biggest problems people have is they often have that hump or back support too low, and if you think of what's actually happening in the spine, you would just be pushing against that part of the spine that's already going the opposite way, part of the sacrum and the coccyx down there. We actually want that to fit nicely into that lumbar, what we call that lumbar lordosis in there. Okay? That's difficult for some people because some people spend a lifetime of sitting where they've actually either changed that lordosis. It's either too much of a curve in the spine or not enough of a curve in the spine. But if you actually put it in there to support that, you're supporting the curve you should have, and you're also supporting part of the weight that comes down. Hot spot number 2 is where the back of your chair meets the seat of your chair. That should be at a 90-degree angle. Hot spot number 3 is where your knee comes over the edge of the seat. You want a cushion firm enough to give you support, but not so hard like the hard edge of a wooden chair that would actually be pinching off, the nerve or the blood supply and so forth. And then hot spot number 4 is your foot should be flat on the ground. If my foot is off the ground like that, I'm contracting my calf muscles. It's the exact same thing that women get from wearing high heel shoes all the time. Unfortunately, fashion tends to win out over good health, so I can't get women out of their high heel shoes. But that foot needs to be flat on the ground. And also appreciate if those calf muscles are tight all the time, they also affect blood flow. Not to mention they're very significant postural muscles as well. How many people have ergonomic chairs? Okay, now keep your hands up if you know what every lever on that chair does. Okay, so 3 of you. Okay? So this is your homework for today, okay, is you are going to skip your afternoon coffee break, okay, and go to your office and turn your chair upside down, and I want you to figure out what every one of those levers on the chair actually does. Now, you may have the proper equipment, or at least part of that, and yet you're not using it. As far as the seat of the chair goes, okay, ideally we want that parallel to the ground. It is permissible, okay, if you're doing a lot of writing, to have it angled a bit of a slant to inward. If you're someone who is actually doing a lot more computer work, it is permissible to actually angle it back the other way. If we angle it back the other way, one of the things it does is it ensures that the lower part of your back is actually making contact with the lumbar support of your chair. And the number of people, I can't tell you the number of people I've seen when we do ergonomic consults that actually go into their office and they've got a great ergonomic chair, and yet they're always forward off their chair where their back never touches their chair. Okay? The ergonomic support only works if you actually use it. If you are a guy and you're still carrying a wallet in your back pocket, please take it out. We've done TV segments on this as well. Here we are, again, in a chiropractor's office at an ergonomic workshop. We want to get you to I've talked to you about the biotonics where we want you to the exact millimeter, and there are guys who are still carrying wallets that are 2 inches thick, okay, in their back pocket, and look what that does to the pelvis. And that's usually 2 inches of, as I say, old girlfriend's phone numbers and old receipts. It's not 2 inches of cash in there. So please get it out. You will never see me carry a wallet in my back pocket. Okay. Now, skill testing question, which of these is correct from an ergonomic perspective as far as this guy's monitor goes? Would you say the one on the left or the one on the right? Neither one of these is correct. Right? What we want, again, we want to make this simple. I'm not going to tell you measurements and distances. What we want is we want something that's going to maintain that neutral posture. So neutral posture would be something where I can look directly into my monitor and it's going to keep me straight. Okay? So ideally, the nose, nose to chin should be somewhere mid part of your monitor and so forth, but it's going to help maintain you in that posture. Okay? I don't want to have to look up. I don't want to have to look down. This particular example here, I've always said that if you are a new optometrist or ophthalmologist, you should open up your office next door to mine, because the number of people who go and get bifocals, right, and then start having headaches, and they immediately go back to the optometrist saying, oh, it must be something wrong with the prescription, has nothing to do with the prescription. They've now changed the way that they hold their head, especially if they're arching back. They're just putting more pinching or pressure on the same nerves that exit the upper part of the neck that are the ones that are creating the headache. So you get all these bifocal glasses that are being returned that there's absolutely nothing wrong with them. Right? As always, let's make it simple. Let's apply some common sense, and let's go back to what neutral posture is all about. As far as desk height goes, or armrest height, again, we want to have something that's going to maintain us in that neutral posture. So ideally, we want our armrest or desk height such that my elbow can be at a nice 90-degree angle and it supports me very nicely. Okay? If that desk height or armrest is even 2 inches lower, I'm going to be tempted to do this. If it's even 2 inches higher, this. And when I first started practice here in Ottawa at the Sports Science Centre, we didn't have any desks in the adjusting rooms, and so we actually had shelves built right out of the walls, and I actually had them build the shelf at the exact height where my arm would rest just perfectly on that. And that doesn't cost any extra money to build it here or build it here or build it here. It's all the exact same thing, and let's just apply it and make some very common sense decisions on what we're doing. This is getting back to your foot, being able to touch the bottom of the ground here. And if you are the manager or the human resources guy who's responsible for paying for all this, understand you don't have to wait 8 weeks to get the super duper foot rest stool that has to be special ordered and costs $1,000. You can throw a telephone book down on the ground. It's not hard to correct some of these things. Right? It's just something that's going to bring us back to that neutral posture that we're looking for. When we get to mouse position and so forth, ideally, again, one of the things to be careful about is we do not want to have a position where our arms are either extended or flexed all day long. Ideally permissible to have it certainly angled in a little bit like that as well. Laptops become a little bit difficult where it's something where a lot of people do a lot of work on their laptops, and unfortunately for most people it's the lesser of two evils. You know, is a laptop down here? Is a laptop up here? Do I have more back pain? Do I have more neck pain? One of the nice things is we have laptops where the keyboards are removable, and those have been around forever, so you can actually, you can actually fix that problem very nicely. What's this picture of?
Cockpit.
Cockpit of an airplane. So you probably don't give this much thought, but isn't it nice to know that next time you're on an airplane, if the pilot suddenly comes upon another jet about to come directly into his or her path, isn't it nice to know, he or she doesn't have to say, oh, holy cow, got to turn the plane. Wait, the thing to turn the plane over here is here. Oh, no, got to hit the brakes, so they're over here. Okay? Guess what? All those things are right in front of the pilot. Right? That's the same way I want you to think of your workstation. The things that we use most often, right, I want to see nice and close to you. The things that you don't use very often can be farther away. How many people have a telephone cord fairy in their office? This is the person who magically comes and tangles your cord all the time when you're not there. Anyone have one of those? Okay? That's you doing it to yourself because you have your phone, way over here, right? Or way on the opposite side. You reach for it like here, you pass it over to the other hand, then you listen this way, then you pass it back this hand, you put it over that way, and you don't realize you've actually twisted your phone cord just once each time you do it, but that's how often you are on the phone. That's not difficult. You move your phone from here over to here, okay? Or if you're on the phone that much, well then obviously you're going to, to a headset for something like that. This is something that I used to make fun of guys. I'll tell you a true story, as I did an ergonomic consult in this very building, in this complex, and this guy, for whatever reason, had his screen was detached, and his screen was about 1 foot by 1 foot, and was right in the middle, and he had it actually attached to the window of the complex. Right? So he's looking into this 1 foot by 1 foot, and then he had about 10 feet on either side of bright sunshine coming in, and he was wondering why he was having difficulties with that. Right? This is not a difficult thing to correct. Okay? Someone like this, you could close your blinds. Okay? You could turn your computer monitor around the other way and sit on the other side. I mean, you could put filters on. There's so many different things you can do. True story, not only did that happen, but then the very next time I gave this lecture, I told the story of that, not realizing he was in my audience as well. Okay? These are simple things to correct. I have a skill testing question for you, and I want you to hear my instructions very carefully. Okay? At this point in time, I want to see how much you know about ergonomics. Okay? And what I want is I just want a number. Okay? I want to be very clear on that. Just a number. I just want a one-word answer from each of you. No explanation. We will get to the explanation afterwards. But for right now, all I want is a number, either number 1, number 2, or number 3. Number 1, you've got the keyboard, you've got this guy reading text, you've got the monitor over to the side. Number 2, you've got the keyboard, you've got the monitor, you've got pad and pencil off to the side. Number 3, you've got pad and pencil in front, monitor here, a keyboard over to the side. So just 1, 2, or 3, no explanation. Just give me 1, 2, or 3, or you can abstain if you don't know the answer. Okay? Which is best from an ergonomic position? 1, 2, or 3? It all depends on what you're doing. As I said right from the start, is your ergonomics have to be like your clothes. Okay? Most people say 2 because that's mostly what they do. Okay? They do a lot of things where they're going to be keying on their keyboard, they're going to be looking directly into the monitor. They might take the occasional note on the pencil and the paper. Okay? If you are someone who doesn't necessarily look into your monitor, or certainly for data entry operators for sure, you'd be doing a lot more keyboard stuff that you might be actually reading right off the text and so forth, and you might occasionally look at the monitor. It might surprise you to know that my setup is number 3, right? But that's what I do. Right? Is I don't key a lot of information into my computer at all. Right? My ladies do that a lot for me. I'm going to be more the guy doing the research off the computer, where I'm going to be reading the monitor and I may be jotting down notes and so forth. It's all specific to what you need to know. Believe it or not, you now know more about ergonomics than most health professionals, certainly most medical doctors know as well. And that still is only step number 1 or step number 2. Let's quickly talk about step number 3 and step number 4, which again, most doctors don't even know about as well. So these are correcting the weaknesses. So let's get all of you to sit up straight for me again. So about 3/4 of you moved, and the other quarter really should move, but they didn't want to be embarrassed and have to move again. So why is that happening? Your body, let's have a heart-to-heart talk. Your body really doesn't care about you that much, right? Because it thinks you don't really care about it that much, right? So it's going to do what you've been telling it to do, right? So if you've been doing this 8, 10, 12 hours a day for who knows how many years, and understand this is not an adult type of thing as well, is, you know, you get out what I call the real world and you work for a couple of years and you start to understand, oh, that's why I got my headaches, my neck pain, da-da-da-da-da. Well, as John was just saying, our kids have been in school for how many years before they even came into the real world doing the exact same stuff, and now they're on the computers and the iPads and all this sort of stuff as well. It takes a toll on your spine. So what happens is, A, your body says, well, guess what? I really don't have the strength to hold me in the position I should be. So basically it says, you know, and my muscles don't have that endurance, so I'm going to do this because that's easier for me. And in the short period of time, it is easier for me, but the second I do this, I'm now just putting all that abnormal pressure back on the spine and on the nervous system. Okay? And also understand that most of you have not trained your bodies to have that muscular endurance. Even the people who say, you know, look, I realize I'm working too much in front of the desk or computer, so I'm going to go in the gym, I'm going to start working out. Well, how do they work out? They go run on a treadmill, they'll go build bigger pecs and bigger biceps and so forth. What does that have to do with the muscular endurance they need in the core, you know, to actually maintain the posture that they should have, right? So what we need to do is we need to correct some of those weaknesses, because you have been untraining your body contrary to what your body wanted. And as I said, your body doesn't care. Right? You are who you are because you do what you do. The two main things, best way to explain spinal stabilization, the two, you know, let's say I wanted bigger bicep muscle. So how would I build a bigger bicep? I'd go into a gym and I'd go do bicep curls, right? Okay? And so when I do that bicep movement, okay, the main, not to get too technical, the main mover is going to be the bicep. Right? Almost always, there's what we call an antagonistic muscle to that. So the antagonistic muscle to the bicep is the tricep, because that's the muscle that would do the exact opposite movement. And then there's even something called a synergistic muscle. That's a muscle that will actually help out the prime mover. In this case, it's the brachioradialis, not that you need to know that. But for that bicep movement to happen, okay, my tricep has to relax. Right? Think how interesting it would be to try to do bicep curls, you know, if my tricep wanted to contract at the same time my bicep wanted to contract. Right? So the tricep needs to know that it needs to relax while we do that move. Make sense so far? So if I want stronger biceps, I'm going to go into a gym, and I'm going to go into my gym and do 2 or 3 sets of bicep curls. And I'm going to do that once or twice a week type of thing, you know, depending what level of training, you know, that I'm at and so forth. Now, and I would eventually build a stronger bicep, correct? Now, what would happen if, instead of doing that, instead of going in 1 or 2 or 3 times a week and building my biceps, what would happen if I went to the gym 12 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week, and did nothing but bicep curls?
You'd get ripped.
Would I get ripped? No? Well, only part of my arm. A, I would really overstrain my bicep muscle, but B, I would tell my tricep muscle to never work. Because every time I'm doing that bicep contraction, I'm saying tricep, don't work, don't work, don't work, don't work, don't work. And if I do that long enough, eventually I shut that tricep muscle off. Okay? It's the exact same thing that we have sitting in front of the desk or computer. Almost every muscle in the body works that way. Here's a really skill testing question. Anyone know what muscle does not have an antagonistic muscle to it?
The heart.
Just for trivia.
The heart.
The tongue. Okay? So, all right, so understand there's a muscle that moves the tongue out. There's really no muscle that pulls the tongue back in, so to speak. But number 2, okay, so if I'm really overstraining, A, I really overstrain that bicep. B, I'm telling my tricep never to work. Exact same thing in the forward head posture. If I'm like this all the time, my upper traps have to contract all the time, otherwise my head's going to be bouncing off the table. Okay? But when I do that, those mid traps are the equivalent, okay, of that bicep to tricep, and so they actually stop working. Right? That wasn't your intention, but all your body knows is 10, 12 hours a day, you're saying, okay, mid back, don't work, don't work, don't work, shut off, shut off, shut off, we never want to use you ever again type of thing. Right? And then we wonder why we see so many people with the forward head posture, but who also have a significant weakness in the mid part of the back as well. And that's one of the most common areas. Second most common area are what we call the hip flexors and lower back. If I'm in that seated posture, I'm telling my hip flexors to always stay contracted. Right? When my hip flexors are always contracted, the equivalent of that, bicep to tricep, are going to be my glutes. Right?
Also a hockey injury.
Right? Yeah, and we see a lot of injuries. You're right. A lot of injuries occur that way because people have imbalances that they don't know that they have. So I'm now telling my glutes to never work anymore. Right? And so then what some well-meaning people might do is they might say, okay, well, I'm going to go into a gym and I'm going to go do some glute extensions or something like that. But understand, if you've been doing this 10, 12 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week for year after year after year, the occasional set of glute exercises is not going to undo that. All the body knows is you've told these guys to shut off. So when they shut off, it's those synergistic muscles that try to pick up the slack, and then you end up, every time you do a glute exercise, these are the people who way overcontract their low back musculature while they're trying to do a glute exercise, because that's what you've trained your body to be. That's what spinal stabilization is all about. You're not going to find this in the gym. This is stuff that goes way beyond that. It gets you back to actually fire the proper muscle firing patterns, which comes from the nervous system telling the right muscles what to do. You're literally retraining the neurological component, of the muscular system in doing that. And then number 4, and this is where chiropractic plays such a big role, is so far we've been talking about what I call your external ergonomics. Where does the desk go? Where does the monitor go? Where does the chair go? And so forth. Well, understand, all that was to try to get, the spine into the exact proper position that it should be. Well, what if I have a spine that is subluxated and a spine, that is crooked? Then all that is like fighting an uphill battle. That's why it's essential that everyone also needs their chiropractic care. They need that proper spinal alignment. They need that proper nervous system function. I mean, they should have that proper nervous system function just for overall health, but specific to you sitting in front of a desk or a computer all day long. Like, understand those years of doing that so far has created internal damage in the spine. This is what I call my banging your head against the wall theory, and I've actually done this in the past. I won't do this today since we're on film, but it'll stick in your head where I'll actually go and I'll bang my head against the wall. And you understand if someone does that, for a good portion of their time, well, they're going to create some head and neck damage. Right? What some of those people will do is they'll come and see someone like myself to fix that head and neck damage, but they never stop banging their head against the wall. Other people will stop banging their head against the wall, but they never correct the damage they've already done. Now, you obviously need to do both, because if you're not correcting the subluxations, that's great, that your chair is perfect and your monitor is perfect, but your spine is crooked. Right? And how on earth do you ever get the proper ergonomics? And as I said, it's not just biggest thing is what you're doing to the nerve, but certainly also how the muscles are going to respond, certainly how that's going to restrict motion over a prolonged period of time that will cause the spine to degenerate. This is how people end up with that osteoarthritis. One of the big ways is if I have abnormal pressure on one side of the vertebrae over the course of my lifetime, well, guess what? It's going to wear and tear faster. Right? And when they do that, it just becomes a vicious cycle. Now, having said all that, I can get you into the perfect posture. I get your spine perfectly straight. I can get you set up perfectly the way it should be, but appreciate that still the human body was never meant to sit for as long as it does. So we want to do some exercises throughout the day. We have what we call the micro breaks, the mini breaks, the macro breaks, and the lunch breaks. So for the micro break, let's get everyone to stand up for me, just quickly for me here. Okay, and I want everyone just to shake their arms out, and now shake your legs out, and take a deep breath in, and deep breath back out. And I want you to change your focus. Instead of looking at me, pick a spot up in the corner somewhere. And I want you to turn your head to one side. I want you to turn your head to the other side. I want to see everyone smile. So let's interrupt that stress cycle. Not that you can be stressed with me. Shake those arms out again for me. Shake those legs out again. Nice deep breath in again. Yeah, I want to see another nice big smile. And we're not stopping until I see everyone smiling at the same time. Come on, Mark, you're not smiling. Okay, good. And now I want you to turn around and see where the back of your chair meets the seat of your chair. Picture a bullseye right there, and aim for the bullseye and sit up perfectly straight for me. Okay? So that is something called the 60-second stand-up perk-up break, and we just probably did the abbreviated version of about 30 seconds. And understand, in that 30 seconds, okay, you just stop the cumulative effects of sitting, okay, taking the deep breath in, refresh your body with some oxygen, given that 30 to 40% reduction you've been doing. The smiling interrupted any stress cycle, the moving of the neck increased the range of motion in there, shaking out the hands and the feet, actually got some blood flow going in there, change your focus, change those 6 little muscles that control the eyes in 30 seconds. Okay? When I first started practice, I used to try to have to convince my patients, to stretch. And I remember this one trucker who said, oh, I don't have time to stretch. And I said, well, you pull up to one red light, you stretch for 30 seconds. You pull up to the next red light, you stretch for another 30 seconds. Okay? And I used to tell people that, listen, you start doing these in the office, and within a week or two, everyone else in the office will be doing the same stretches because you're all suffering from the same thing. So forget the stretching. I mean, every hour, get up and spend 30 seconds, okay? Or 60 seconds. And for everyone who thinks, oh, I can't do that, I'm just too busy, every study that has ever been done has shown that people who do this are far more productive at their work, far fewer errors, far more productivity, and so forth. That's the 60-second stand-up perk-up break. Okay? If you want to get into some more of the mini breaks. These are deep breathing exercises. So again, if we're in a posture where we're getting 30 to 40% less oxygen, why on earth would we actually not try to get more oxygen back into the body? Most people have forgotten how to breathe properly. Anyone know, who do you watch if you want to see someone breathe properly? A baby, absolutely. Okay, you watch a baby breathe, and breathing, okay, when you take a breath in, it's not army breathing. I don't want to see your chest expand. I want to see your diaphragm expand. Watch a baby breathe and you'll see the stomach go up and down. Okay? And most people have forgotten how to do that. Okay? Literally put your hand on your stomach, and when you take a breath in, you should see your abdomen actually expand doing that. Okay? We've done this in some of our stress workshops where people have a tough time just even breathing properly. Now, again, not to get off on too much of a tangent, but what emotion is tied into shallow breathing? Anyone know?
Stress.
Well, stress isn't really an emotion, but stress will certainly cause that. Anger. Okay, so think about this. When you were a little kid, either it was your parents who were counting to 10 before they yelled at you, or vice versa, or whatever, right? and they would take a deep breath before they do that. Right? And again, all your body knows is if you're always in the same physical state of the shallow breathing, well, surprise, surprise, you're more likely to be in the emotional state of anger. Right? So appreciate how all these things tie into one another. Progressively, relaxation is another mini break. Literally just basically you go down the entire body and you start contracting muscles at different points in time. So you would start by just contracting the shoulder muscles and relaxing. Then you contract the upper arm and you relax. You contract the lower arm and the fists and you contract. You contract the abdomen, go all the way down. Okay? Something focusing is just, again, a really simple technique. They say the average Canadian or American is spending 40 hours a week watching television. Okay? So this week, if you're average, I want you to only spend 39 hours watching TV, okay? And take that extra hour and just come up with a plan and say, good, guess what, at work, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to change this. And of course, I'm being a little facetious. I'd like you to be watching a lot less than 39 hours of TV out there. But come up with a plan, right? Just come up with a plan. Positive imagery is something that a little corny for some people, but if you have to picture yourself on a beach in Barbados to relax, then picture yourself on a beach in Barbados. Now, how many people exercise on a regular basis? Now, appreciate, again, okay, what we're talking about is what you do the other hours of the day will impact your ability to do this. How many people have gotten home and just said, oh no, I'm just too tired to exercise, I just don't want to do it? Okay, and yet you did it anyway, right? Because think of what happens, okay, is we get up in the morning, and hopefully you're having breakfast where you sit, and then you go to work where either you're sitting in your car or you're sitting on the bus, and then you get to work and you sit, and then you go for your morning coffee break and you sit, you go back to work and you sit, you go to lunch and you sit, you go back to work and you sit, you go for your afternoon coffee break and you sit, you go back to work and you sit, you get back in your car and you sit, and you go home, and then what do? You sit. Why? Because you're tired. From what? From sitting all day. Okay? Doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay? Is remember, when we forced ourselves to do that workout, how did we feel after? Always better. So as I said, you now know more about ergonomics than most health professionals do. Okay? You have to have that awareness. If you want to play an interesting little game, okay, today times have changed where everyone has a phone and that has a camera these days. So tell other people in your office to snap pictures of you when you're in this forward head posture or this chronic work posture, okay, to get to understand the differences. You now understand what proper ergonomics is all about. You understand that you need to correct those weaknesses. These are the steps you need to do. Again, like I said, most of you, I believe, are patients or wellness clients. If you need advice, call us. 688-1036. You guys all know where we are. If you do not have a chiropractor, get a good chiropractor. If you're here in the Ottawa area, certainly come see us. If you have not, again, if you're a patient of ours, you either have had or will have a spinal stabilization program. We do that on all of our patients. But number three, stop sitting so much. I've been doing this workshop for years and years and years, and I would always tell people the proper way to sit. And that certainly beats not sitting properly, but the truth is we still spend way too much time sitting. Okay? Other questions that we typically get, what about stand-up workstations? Stand-up workstations are great. Okay? Sometimes they come with other problems because, again, people, if they're terribly out of shape, don't realize, hey, standing all day long is tough to do, especially in that same posture. That's a different workshop. People ask about the gym balls and things like that. The gym balls, if you want to sit on an exercise ball, those are good for people who are already in pretty good shape. If you have a good chiropractor, if you've got good spinal stabilization, then a gym ball is fine because it's going to remind you to maintain that good posture. But if you are someone who has terrible spinal stabilization, has never seen a chiropractor in their life, bless you, okay, is all you're doing is you've just removed all the ergonomic aids, from your body. If you believe the Harley-Davidson motorcycle ads, they think the Harley-Davidson bike is the best ergonomic position for you. The truth is, the studies have shown there is one ergonomic position that beats every other position. Anyone know what that is? What angle that's at?
Is it the one the NASA, the at-rest NASA astronaut?
It's actually the astronaut one where you would actually be sitting like this, right? You know, and so if you can get your computer monitor on the ceiling and invert your chair, now again, most of you are not going to be doing that posture, right? We're not going to go to those extremes. That's why go with what I've given you today. Okay? There are some so-called ergonomic consultants who say, hey, this is all just too hard. Let's just sit any way you want and just deal with the problems afterwards. I really wouldn't say that that's an expert opinion, you know, and so forth. Okay? But all things you can do. Again, most of you are patients or clients. Take advantage of all of our free information. We have tons of free information. So whether it's on our websites or Facebook pages or LinkedIn or Twitter, you know, et cetera, YouTube channel and so forth, you are now all duly deputized to go out and change the world and to live a lot longer and to not be taking time off your life with every hour that you sit.